There was a time when everything around you was chaos, and you were too weak to fight back. You were haunted by whispers in the dark, not from ghosts, but from the weight of your own failures. The devil didn't need to work hard back then. You were already breaking yourself. He watched you reach for the bottle, the phone, the distraction, the toxic lover. He didn't need to drag you to hell. You were building a room there all by yourself. He fed off your indecision, your excuses, your quiet self-loathing behind the forced smile. Every time you said maybe tomorrow, he smiled wider. You thought you were unlucky, but really, you were just easy prey. You were a kingdom without a gate, a warrior without armor, a soul without fire. And that's exactly when he was strongest, when you were weakest. There were nights your pillow knew the weight of your tears better than your friends ever did. You smiled in daylight, but bled silently in the dark, choking on the guilt of promises you never kept to yourself. You swore you'd quit, swore you'd try, swore tomorrow would be different. But every time tomorrow came, you found yourself drowning again, in comfort, in numbness, in fear. The devil didn't need chains. He used your own habits as shackles. You didn't even notice him, not at first, because he came in the voice that said, "Take it easy. You deserve a break. No one's watching." He came as your friend, your craving, your convenience. And by the time you realized he was there, you had already built a home out of your pain and called it survival. But it wasn't survival. It was slow, spiritual suicide dressed up as normal life. And when people told you to just be positive, you wanted to scream because they didn't see the battlefield inside your chest. They didn't hear the screams that lived in your silence. You weren't lazy, you were lost. You weren't broken, you were bleeding from wounds no one could see. You wanted to be better, but wanting wasn't enough. You needed war. You needed something stronger than inspiration. You needed desperation. You needed to burn the bridge back to your old life. The devil thrived in your delay. He used every hour wasted, every opportunity passed, to twist the knife deeper. And he laughed, not with cruelty but with confidence, because he didn't fear your failure. He feared the day you'd finally stand up. You remember sitting in your room, lights off, phone in hand, scrolling through lives you wished you had, while ignoring the one you were losing. You remember telling yourself you were fine, but deep down you knew you were rotting in your own comfort. You were addicted to avoidance, addicted to being almost ready. You kept yourself small because you were afraid of the weight that came with power. And while you waited, the devil kept building his throne inside your passivity. Every moment you refused to move was a prayer to your destruction. Every time you stayed silent, when you should have screamed, he grew stronger, until your silence became your coffin. But that was then. You weren't born weak. You were trained to believe weakness was your only option. You were surrounded by broken models of masculinity and told to smile through the suffering. But deep inside, there was always a beast, a warrior sleeping beneath the scars. And that beast began to stir. The moment you realized your suffering wasn't a punishment, it was preparation. Because real strength doesn't come from comfort. It's forged in the fire of your darkest nights. And the moment you accepted your pain instead of running from it, the devil saw something he never expected, a man willing to fight. And that was the beginning of the end for him. But something shifted. Maybe it was rock bottom. Maybe it was that one day you couldn't take the lies anymore. You looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the hollow shell staring back. Your rage wasn't against the world anymore. It turned inward. That pain lit a fire, and that fire became something dangerous. You stopped looking for sympathy and started building discipline. You replaced distraction with focus, excuses with accountability. You started waking up early. You started pushing weight. You started praying not to be saved, but to become unstoppable. And with each repetition, each tear, each brutally honest look inward, you got stronger. And that's when the devil started packing his bags. That shift wasn't loud. It didn't come with applause or angel choirs. It came in the quiet, in the silence between another night of failure and the morning you said no more. It came in clenched fists and red eyes and shaking hands that refused to hit snooze again. You didn't even believe in yourself yet, but you believed you had nothing left to lose. And that was enough. Enough to take the first step. Enough to lift that first weight. Enough to look in the mirror and say, if no one's coming to save me, then I will save myself. That fire didn't roar at first. It flickered. But even a flicker is dangerous when it's fueled by pain. People didn't notice right away. They still saw the same shell, still called you by your old name. But you knew. You were evolving in secret. You weren't chasing motivation anymore. You were becoming the kind of man who doesn't need it. You trained in silence, built rituals while others slept. You stopped talking about potential and started living like your soul was on the line. And every time you ignored the easy way out, every time you did what needed to be done without a round of applause, you hammered steel onto your spine. The devil wasn't gone yet, but he was watching, uneasy, uncomfortable, because you were becoming something he couldn't manipulate anymore, a man with purpose. You stopped worshipping comfort, started craving the pain, not because you enjoyed suffering, but because you knew it meant growth. You took cold showers to kill weakness. You stared your addictions in the face and refused to blink. You started fasting, training, praying, reading, not to impress anyone, but to discipline the animal within you. The devil saw it happening. Slowly, relentlessly, your pain was being alchemized into power. You weren't just resisting anymore. You were hunting. Every breath you took became a declaration, I am not who I was. And with each passing day, his grip loosened, and one day you woke up, and it was quiet. Not because the demons were gone, but because they knew better now. You didn't slay them, you made them fear you. The devil didn't run because you found God. He ran because you became the weapon. The very thing that once broke you now bows to you. You became the storm, you became the wrath, and the man in the mirror. He's not hollow anymore. He's dangerous, unstoppable, alive. The devil didn't leave because he lost interest. He left because you got too strong. The devil doesn't fear church songs or crosses on the wall. He fears a man who gets up after being broken. He fears a woman who chooses herself after betrayal. He fears a mind that's calm in chaos, a body trained in pain, a soul forged in storms. He fears a human being who has nothing left to lose, but still chooses to rise. He can't whisper to someone who's already faced their demons and made them bleed. He thrives in weakness, but now you drip with resilience. He can't tempt you with fake love anymore. You've felt real pain. He can't manipulate you. With fear, you've walked through it and built a home there. And when he realized you weren't breaking anymore, he ran. You didn't just change, you transformed like a phoenix waking up in the ruins. You didn't ask for a softer life, you built a harder backbone. When the world kept taking, you stopped giving it your peace. You sharpened your pain into a blade and carved your new self from the bones of your past. You became someone who no longer hopes, but creates. Someone who doesn't wait to be saved, but saves themselves. The fire that once threatened to consume you now fuels you. The scars on your skin don't hide your story, they scream it. You no longer fear being alone because solitude is where you trained. You didn't survive to return to the old. You survived to become unrecognizable. People don't understand how dangerous you've become, not because you seek destruction, but because you understand it. You've been through chaos without breaking, so now chaos avoids you. You carry silence like a sword and purpose like armor. You don't flinch anymore because you've learned the difference between threats and noise. They called you cold, but they never asked what it took to become this steady. They said you changed, and you did, intentionally, violently, beautifully. You buried your weakness with your past and walked out of the grave alone. You know Longer chase healing. You embody it. The storm isn't coming anymore. The storm is you. The devil once whispered that you weren't enough, that you'd never make it, that you were too broken, too soft, too tired. But now you speak louder than his lies just by standing. He sent demons to shake your foundation, but you danced through the collapse. You were supposed to drown, but you learned to breathe underwater. You were meant to shatter, but you built a cathedral from your broken glass. You've become calm in fire, patient in battle, and ruthless in purpose. That's why he doesn't try anymore. Not because he couldn't win, but because you made the battlefield your home. You don't fight demons anymore. You walk past them like ghosts. You became the nightmare of everything that tried to bury you. Not loud, not reckless, just undeniably unshakable. You became the warning, the cautionary tale whispered in fear, the one they said changed after the pain. And they were right. You didn't grow back the same. You came back made of stone, flame, and a kind of quiet power that breaks egos and rewrites destinies. And the devil? He didn't lose to prayers or rituals. He lost to you, to your discipline, your evolution, your refusal to stay broken. You are what happens when someone survives everything and then becomes something greater. Now people look at you and think they've got it all figured out, but they don't know what it cost. They don't see the sleepless nights, the battles fought in solitude. They don't hear the voice you silenced, the one that said, "Give up." They don't see how you turned pain into fuel, how your heart beats to the rhythm of war drums now. You still feel the weight some days, but now you lift it like a barbell. Your mind is sharp, like broken glass pieced together with purpose. You walk like someone who's been through hell and brought back souvenirs. You don't ask for peace, you are peace, forged through fire. And that's exactly why the devil can't stand to be near you anymore. They see the strength, but not the scars beneath it. The invisible ones that ache in silence, even on your best days. They don't know how many times you broke and rebuilt yourself without witnesses, without applause. You've mastered the art of looking calm while carrying chaos in your chest. You've held it together when everything inside was screaming to fall apart. And now they confuse your composure with ease, your silence with simplicity. But only you know the wars you fought alone, in your room, in your mind, in the mirror. You weren't just surviving, you were sharpening. You weren't just enduring, you were evolving. The devil didn't flee because you became perfect. He ran because you became unbreakable in your imperfection. You made peace with your shadows, and now walk in a light too bright for lies. They don't see the days you wanted to quit, not just on the dream, but on yourself. The mornings you woke up heavy, the nights you went to bed with a storm behind your eyes. They don't know how it feels to carry grief like a second skin, or how you stitched yourself together with nothing but faith and fury. You turned anxiety into armor, doubt into drive. You didn't wait for motivation, you moved through madness. You taught yourself discipline when everything inside screamed for escape. And that's the kind of strength no one claps for. Quiet strength, real strength. The kind that makes even demons step back and reconsider. You walk different now, not because you're arrogant, but because you're aware. You're aware of what it costs to stand here. You carry yourself like someone who knows their worth because you paid in pain to find it. People ask how you're so calm, not knowing you've already lived through what they fear. They wonder why you don't chase love, not realizing you've already been burned and rebuilt without it. You don't move for validation anymore. You move because your soul has a compass now. You walk like war, speak like still water, and love with boundaries carved in stone. The devil hates that because he can't use what you've already claimed. He can't control what you've already confronted. You're no longer haunted by your past. You honor it. Every mistake became a teacher. Every failure became fuel. Every betrayal became the blueprint for your rise. The old version of you would have begged for mercy. This version doesn't need it. You didn't just change, you transformed through pressure, pain, and persistence. Now your presence unsettles the weak and inspires the strong. You are proof that resurrection doesn't need a miracle, just a refusal to stay dead. You don't chase the light anymore. You are the light because you earned it. And the devil, he doesn't just avoid you, he warns others about you now. He left when you stopped looking for validation. He left when you deleted her number, when you blocked the past. He left when you said no more and meant it. He left when you realized discipline is the highest form of love. When you stopped crying out for someone to save you and saved yourself instead. He left when you got comfortable being uncomfortable, when you embraced solitude like an old friend. When you stopped praying for ease and started praying for strength. He left when he realized he couldn't shake you anymore. You became untouchable, not because you were perfect, but because you were real. He left when you started to see pain as a personal trainer, not a punishment. When you began turning breakdowns into blueprints. When you used the rubble of your mistakes to build a fortress, no lie could enter. You stopped begging for closure and started writing your own ending. You stopped explaining yourself to people who never deserved to hear your truth. And in that silence, in that moment you chose yourself over approval, the devil trembled. Because he thrives in confusion, in chaos, in self-doubt. But now, you became clear, sharp like a blade pulled from fire, grounded like a mountain that no storm could move. He left when you started speaking the truth, even when your voice shook, when your hands trembled, but you still picked up the sword, when you stopped calling your trauma a curse and started calling it training. People thought you were being cold, but they couldn't understand the kind of warmth it takes to set yourself on fire just to rise from your own ashes. You weren't being cold. You were becoming precise, focused, unshakable. That's what scared him most. Not your anger, but your discipline. Not your tears, but your silence. Not your desperation, but your decision to finally cut the cord. He left when you learned to love the parts of yourself that no one clapped for. When you looked in the mirror and didn't flinch. When your worth no longer rose or fell based on who stayed or who left. You were no longer prey for emotional predators. You stopped leaking your energy trying to be understood. You learned that the highest form of power is in restraint, not reaction, in walking away, not chasing, in rebuilding yourself in private. So he ran, he left. Because the one thing evil fears most is a person who no longer fears being alone, a person who has made peace with their own darkness and walks with it in full awareness. He left because he couldn't manipulate what he couldn't move. Your triggers became teachings, your scars became scripture. The battlefield became your sanctuary, and now you don't need to scream to be heard. Your presence speaks for you. He doesn't knock anymore because he knows the door has been bricked shut. You turned your wounds into weapons, your pain into prophecy, your loneliness into leadership. You're not just healed, you're dangerous, and the devil knows it. You started walking like every step was a battle cry. You dressed with purpose. You spoke with weight, every move calculated, every silence filled with meaning. No longer a victim, no longer apologizing for your presence. You owned your past like a soldier wears armor, battered but powerful. And now the devil can only watch from afar. He'll send distractions. He'll test your focus. But the difference now, you see it all. You're 10 steps ahead, eyes locked forward, heart unshakable. You stopped being hunted and became the hunter. You started carrying yourself like a living war cry, each breath measured, each glance deliberate. You walk like the earth should. Thank you for not tearing it apart with every step. The air around you shifted, not with arrogance, but with a certain kind of earned authority. The kind that comes from suffering with grace and rising without applause. Your silence became heavier than most people's screams. Your presence no longer begged to be accepted. It commanded acknowledgement. You no longer had to say much. Just being there was enough to make the room feel different, and that was the point. You stopped being decorative. You became disruptive. Every habit became holy. every ritual sacred, the way you make your bed, the way you train, the way you read, write, eat, all of it became part of your armor. You weren't chasing purpose, you were embodying it. The devil can't find his way in anymore because there's no crack in the walls. You stopped rushing, started sharpening. You stopped chasing feelings and started mastering structure. You began speaking life into yourself. While others looked for validation, you became your own proof. And every time you whispered, "I'm not done yet," hell flinched. Because he knows how this ends. You don't lose, you evolve. You learned how to hear insults and turn them into instructions, how to absorb betrayal and bleed purpose. You stopped needing revenge because success became it. You learned how to disappear from distractions and reappear in destiny. You started surrounding yourself with silence and people who speak in actions. And now you don't even argue. You outgrow. The enemy used to dance in your doubts, but now your mind is a locked vault guarded by focus. The devil keeps sending the same test, hoping you'll forget who you are. But you've already passed it. And now every attempt just reminds you that you've leveled up. And here's the final twist. You stopped fighting for your spot in the world and started claiming it. You're not hoping for a seat at the table, you're building your own throne. The devil no longer fears your light, he fears your discipline to protect it. Because you're not perfect, you're prepared. Not flawless, but forged. You're not fearless, but fear no longer controls your aim. You look straight ahead, eyes like steel, soul like fire. You don't chase peace anymore, you become it. And when evil tries to creep close again, all it sees now is a hunter walking home. The people who once doubted you now whisper your name in awe. They feel your energy before you even speak. You don't need to announce your growth. It's in your posture, your pace, your presence. You speak less, but when you do, it cuts. Through noise like thunder. The world sees strength, but what they don't see is the pain that shaped it. What they don't know is that every morning you still fight, but now you win. You don't need anyone to believe in you anymore. You believe in yourself. That's why you're dangerous. That's why you're rare. Because you walked through fire and didn't just survive. You learned how to dance in the flames. They don't know how many nights you laid awake, fists clenched, jaw tight, staring at the ceiling with a war raging in your chest. You weren't born unbreakable. You were shattered so many times that your soul learned to rebuild itself from fragments sharper than blades. Every scar on your heart is a map, a trail of survival, pain, and relentless forward motion. While they were busy laughing at your silence, they didn't realize silence was your forge. You disappeared not to retreat, but to sharpen your edge. You trained in isolation, drowned in your own fears, and bled through invisible battles no one applauded. And now, you walk back into the world like a storm-wearing skin. You don't look like revenge. You don't look like rage. You look like everything they swore you'd never become. And it terrifies them. They whisper now, but they used to mock. They stare now, but they used to ignore. That's the beautiful tragedy of growth. It flips the script without needing to raise its voice. You don't chase validation anymore. You became the standard. Your walk has weight, your energy has gravity, and people feel it before you even speak. Because real strength doesn't need theatrics, it just is. You've become a quiet force, the kind that enters a room and makes noise tremble. And that power? It was earned. Earned in the dirt, in the betrayal, in the silence that almost swallowed. You whole, but you didn't just survive. You became the storm they thought would break you. Now they try to align with you, hoping you'll forget who stood with you and who watched you drown. But you remember, not to hold grudges, but to honor your journey. Because when no one clapped, you clapped for yourself. When no one showed up, you still stood tall. That's why your confidence doesn't scream, it just walks. That's why your peace is so loud, your presence so heavy. You learned to stop explaining your worth to people who couldn't even recognize their own. And now, you're magnetic. unapologetic, unshakable. The person you became is someone even your past self wouldn't recognize. And that's the point. You've rewritten the definition of resilience. It's no longer about just surviving hardship. It's about rising with elegance, with venom, with vision. It's about building a life so full of purpose that even pain bows before it. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be legendary. And while they're still trying to figure you out, you've already figured out the game. You're not playing it anymore. You are the game. And the truth is, no one really doubted you. They just feared what would happen if you ever realized who you really were. Well, you did. And now, they all feel it. The devil left when you became everything he feared you'd become. Not a saint, not a savior, but a warrior. Spiritually grounded, mentally lethal. You pray before battle, but you bring hell when challenged. You hold light in one hand and fire in the other. You carry peace like a sword, not a flower. You're not here to play small, to beg for crumbs, or shrink to fit their comfort. You're here to conquer the storm inside and wear it like a crown. Let them talk. Let the devil watch. Let the world underestimate you, because now you are the danger they never saw coming. The devil didn't leave because he was defeated by light. He left because he recognized the darkness in you no longer served him. You took your shadow back. You made peace with your demons. You didn't purge the chaos. You learned how to use it. Now your discipline is forged from chaos, and your heart beats with purpose instead of panic. You don't tremble when fear knocks. You answer the door with open arms and dare it to try again. That's what makes you untouchable. You're not just fighting darkness, you've mastered it. You walk into every storm now not to survive, but to own it. The devil left because he realized you were no longer prey. You were predator in disguise. And now he watches from the distance, praying you don't turn around. You used to beg for peace. Now you carry it. Not the soft, fragile kind. No, yours is laced with power. A weapon sheathed in restraint. The calm before impact. People don't understand how someone so quiet can be so dangerous. But danger isn't loud, it's focused. You're no longer moved by noise, temptation, or flattery. Your spirit has been tempered in holy fire and hardened by trials meant to destroy you. But instead of breaking, you became the breaking point. You don't chase approval, you chase alignment. And when something threatens that alignment, you don't fold, you obliterate it. The world sees a warrior, but doesn't know the monk behind the armor. You don't scream your faith, you live it. You pray not for ease, but for endurance. You don't ask for the enemy to be removed, you ask for the strength to drag them to the gates of their own shame. You've become a paradox, brutal, yet sacred, humble yet unyielding. You can love with your whole heart and still walk away without flinching. You forgive, but you never forget. Because every betrayal taught you precision. Every loss gave you vision. And now that you've walked through the hell meant to destroy you, you've made it your throne. You are everything they said you'd never be. Not because you followed their blueprint, but because you burned it. You didn't rise through comfort. You rose through pressure, through rejection, through silence. And now you speak in actions, move with conviction, and carry a peace that makes devils nervous. Let them watch. Let them doubt. Let them try to understand your evolution with a mind built to fear it. Because what you've become is not just powerful, it's prophetic. You're no longer fighting the dark. You are the light they can't put out, and the fire that refuses to die.